Sevilla is that club that might have never had the strongest squad or the most exciting players, but consistently did well in Spain and especially in Europe. In the past 20 years, Sevilla has conquered 8 European trophies, 7 of which were Europa Leagues. It's quite an impressive resume for a club that almost went bankrupt in the 90s without achieving anything spectacular in the previous century. But as we currently stand, Sevilla is in serious danger of getting relegated for the first time since 1997, and in the worst case scenario, ceasing to exist altogether. But how could a club that was so consistent for over 2 decades reach such a staggering low? Well, in this video, I'm going to answer that question. I'm going to look into everything that went wrong, both on and off the pitch, and by the end, you'll realize that the main reason behind their downfall was a huge family betrayal. But first, let me give you some context. Sevilla was founded in 1890 by a group of drunk Scots who wanted to exercise in their free time. This is not a joke, by the way. There are official documents that clearly state they founded the club after a night of drinks. Later that year, the club played the first football match ever in Spain against Huelva and won it 2-0. In the following decades, Sevilla would establish itself as the strongest club from Andalusia, but it would only reach the first division in the 1930s. It was a remarkable feat achieved greatly thanks to Ramon Sánchez Pizjuán, who's still referred to as their eternal president. I mean, it's understandable. He guided Sevilla from the second tier to the first, conquering 2 Copas del Rey. He also had the honorable attitude of negotiating so Sevilla and Betis players wouldn't be forced into military duty during the Spanish Civil War. Ramon might have had good intentions, but since the nationalists won the war, he was forced out of his position as Sevilla's president. So technically, he wasn't the one in charge when Sevilla won their first and only league title to this day. But he did come back to his position with renewed ambition and plans to expand their stadium, which was getting a bit too small for their big fan base. Unfortunately, he never had a chance to turn those plans into reality during his lifetime. However, his successor and close friend Ramon de Carranza completed his vision and named the stadium after the deceased president. Yeah, this might sound wonderful if you love touching stories, but in reality, building such a huge stadium was a terrible move. From the 1970s until the end of the century, Sevilla was an inconsistent club plagued by a lot of financial issues. They might have played several matches in Europe and even had the honor of signing Maradona, but during the 90s, their crisis became unsustainable and Los Nervionenses had to spend some seasons in the second tier. In a way, that dramatic collapse was necessary to rebuild the club in a healthier way. The then president Roberto Aleix appointed the unknown Joaquín Caparrós as manager, and that bold move turned out to be a golden one as he achieved promotion on his first attempt. That was the beginning of the revolution. But the defining moment that turned Sevilla into the club you know today was when Del Nido Benavente took over as president and appointed Monchi as his sporting director. Upon making a comeback to top-flight football, Sevilla was still in terrible financial shape, with some reports claiming the club had a €40 million debt. That might not seem like much, but you've got to realize that currency value was completely different 2 decades ago. Either way, the newfound partnership yielded outstanding results. Sevilla adopted a clear strategy of finding undervalued foreign talent and developing it alongside their own academy projects. This might seem like a no-brainer nowadays, but before the turn of the millennium, many clubs didn't have access to the best scouts who could deliver accurate information about foreign players, especially those in unexplored markets. Thanks to some brilliant work by Monchi, Sevilla was able to tap into that unexplored Brazilian market and find quite a few gems like Dani Alves, Julio Batista and Renato. Season after season, Sevilla grew stronger. For each big money sale, the club always found a way to stay at the same level and find an adequate replacement. And that, gentlemen, is how you get a club out of debt. Moreover, Sevilla wasn't simply surviving, they were thriving. After their first 2 seasons back in La Liga, where they stayed mid-table, Sevilla evolved into a European contender as they would finish in the top 6 from 2004 until 2011. During that time span, Sevilla achieved quite a lot in Europe. They won back-to-back UEFA Cups, won Super Cup against Barca, and returned to the Champions League 50 years after their last appearance. If that sounds impressive for a club that less than 10 years prior was about to go bankrupt, then I don't know what you'll think about their 2010s. In that decade, Sevilla won 3 consecutive Europa Leagues, a tally they would continue to increase in 2020 and 2023. Their influence in that competition is so big that they're literally synonymous with it. Even when they were playing Champions League football, most of us would start placing bets on them finishing 3rd, moving to the Europa League, and ultimately winning it. So, wasn't I supposed to talk about how Sevilla is currently about to collapse? This just seems like a pretty remarkable comeback story. Well, you know, life comes in cycles. I felt pretty good at the moment I was writing this, but the version of me that's reading this script could be feeling like shit, and now that I'm reading this script, I'm not feeling like shit, but things could be better. Either way, Sevilla went through a massive crisis in the 90s, they bounced back, but they're now in an even worse position. Because winning Europa Leagues at a crazy rate might look fun, but it doesn't pay the bills. As the years passed, Sevilla got a little too comfortable spending more than they could on players who were never that good. Out of their 10 most expensive players, Sevilla only managed to get a profit out of Koundé, while the rest either flopped or left for less than what they came for. I hate to be repetitive, but some absurd deals really make you question the intentions of the people in charge. Rony Lopes is their 2nd most expensive player, and he only played a total of 40 matches in half a season. Football's biggest gangster, Quincy Promes, only managed to net 3 goals in 49 matches. Munas Dabour cost 17 million euros and he didn't even play 10 matches before he left Sevilla for only 12 million euros. But there's an important detail I haven't mentioned yet. All these expensive deals only occurred after the arrest of Del Nido Benavente. Yup, this sleazeball looking dude was arrested back in 2013 for embezzlement. If you're a dumbass like me, that's basically using money you're responsible for and that isn't yours for personal gain. Which is kind of ironic since this guy is a lawyer, but I digress. Upon his arrest, Del Nido Benavente passed his responsibilities to Pepe Castro and his son Del Nido Carrasco, but the original plan was for Benavente to return to his position upon release. Well, that never happened, as his son backstabbed them and signed a deal with Pepe Castro that would keep the latter in presidency until 2024, before Carrasco took over from 2024 until 2027. All this instability eventually pushed Monchi, perhaps the greatest architect of Sevilla's success in the market, out of the club in 2017. Though he would come back to help the club win 2 more Europa League titles, the types of deals he orchestrated were nearly as sustainable as those from the beginning of the century. As a result, Sevilla amassed huge debt year after year, and after the global pandemic shut down the world, it was simply impossible to cover their problems any longer. Sevilla no longer is able to compete with their rivals, as their accumulated debt from the past 4 seasons now stands at 167 million euros. Some deniers might say the club has been injected with 108 million euros, but in reality, this money can only be used to renew the club's infrastructure, and not to cover the major financial ruin the club is in at the moment. That's why I think it's so important to constantly revisit and learn from the past, because history has a weird tendency to repeat itself. The thing that led a stable Sevilla into ruin in the past was biting off more than they could chew. And now, here we are in the exact same position. It's pretty obvious what the outcome will be. Either Sevilla produces a great batch of talented youngsters they can sell for huge profits, or they'll end up like Deportivo La Coruna or Malaga. Their current position in La Liga stable and poor run of form doesn't surprise me one bit. After all, their squad is pretty much at the same level as just another average La Liga team, but with the added problem of facing a huge internal crisis. I can't even imagine what a Sevillista is feeling right now. Their eternal punchy bag rivals are now in much better shape than them, and Europa League conquests are starting to feel like a thing of the past. I'm really curious to see what the future might hold for them, but what about you? Did you know Sevilla were in that much trouble? Let me know about other struggling football clubs that you want to hear me talk about in a future video in the comments below. And please, don't forget to leave a like if you've made it this far in the video, as it really makes a difference on how many people will YouTube show this video. And hey, since we're already talking about the financial downfall of a major club, stick around and watch this video about the dangers of private ownership in football. It's gotten so bad in Portugal that clubs are now merging with others all the time, completely destroying the identity and culture in the country. I'll see you there.